Welcome to the Sharpe Way show. Yes, it is 7 p.m. That means it's Sharpe Way time, Eastern time, that is, for you people across the country. Obviously, things change. I have a very special guest show tonight, which is not as common as you sometimes see. But no matter what, guys, if you care about what we're doing, it is important that you like, comment, and share. Get this out there. Let people know that this matters. It's very important that we do that. As always, like me on Twitter. Like me on Facebook, like me on YouTube. This stuff matters. Do it now to make sure that the algorithms kick in. See, I'm this tech guy. I know algorithm stuff. No, I don't. Whatever. The algorithms will kick in. People will see us. People will care. And before you know it, now people are understanding that we are a force here, and it does matter. If you got a couple bucks, awesome. Patreon.com/SharpeWay. Throw me 10, 20, 30 bucks. If you're a bazillionaire like CJ is here, if you got tons of money like him, if you got CJ money, then throw me like $500 or $1,000 a month if you got that kind of money. Not everybody can be wealthy like CJ is. But I'm just saying, if you are that wealthy, then then you can throw me a whole bunch of money. If not, no worries. Like, comment, and share. I am very happy today. I have today a fellow Marine, someone who's been through a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about today, someone who can put a face on the military, the part of our military industrial complex, part of our empire building, can put a face on this, can tell us something about it that really matters, a different spin. The man himself out of South Dakota, CJ Abernathy. How are you, sir?
Mr. Sharpe, always a pleasure to have a chance to share a screen with a libertarian legend like yourself.
Ooh, I'm a legend. I like that.
Oh, well, it sounds a lot more appropriate than elder of the party.
I'll take either. Elder's fine. I'm an old man. I got gray hair. Oh, good. I can take elder. I'm not worried about getting older.
Earned, sir. So
I like that.
But Larry, you said it last time that we didn't get into much of my military background and what I've been through, and that's why you invited me on here so we could have this discussion. And I don't think many people realize that there is a veteran voice in this party.
Absolutely.
That is a very loud minority. And so it is nice to be able to share this common ground with you to say, what have we gone through to this point to where we don't relate to the two-party duopoly anymore, but yet we both served it.
Absolutely.
We both at one point said that we'll put our lives on the line, write that blank check. We've heard all the talking points, take an oath to the Constitution. And, I'll admit, I didn't even really know what that even meant when I joined.
So let me ask that question of you. All right. I mean, you're in South Dakota. Were you in South Dakota when you joined, or were you someplace else?
So, no, I actually, funny story, I was a shoe salesman at Sears. And
where?
In Washington State.
Okay, so you were in Washington and you're selling shoes. Okay.
Yeah, and I used to walk home every night, and I'd walk right past the recruiting stations.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually walked into the Army recruiter and heard all the things he could offer. I went through all the branches, and when I finally got to the Marine Corps, they said, "Nah, we don't want you. You can go to the Army." I was like,
"Wow,
but I want to be a Marine." Well, you don't just get to be a Marine. You can want to be a Marine. You don't just get to be a Marine. And so after about a month or so, I kind of took that as an insult. And of course. And then I walked back every single night passing it. To one point, I went and I said, okay, what do I need to do to become a Marine? And then the recruiter said, now you've asked me the right question.
Right.
And so at first he was like, well, what are you interested in doing? Take the ASVAB,
the ASVAB, I remember, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I took the ASVAB, and he said,
for those you don't know, the ASVAB is almost like an SAT for the military.
Correct. Yeah. And so I took that, and they're like, well, you can do whatever you want to do. What do you want to do? And I was like, I don't want to go to combat. I don't really believe in murdering people on behalf of the government.
Right.
But, I was like, well, okay, well, maybe, I can play in the band. So I was like, there's a Marine Corps band. So I was like, sign me up to be a Marine Corps reservist.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I'll be a reservist, a band member, and just do that route.
So you signed up in the Marine Corps. First, if I'm clear, the guy said, you can't be a Marine. You went, please, what do I got to do? And then when he said yes, you said, I want to be a band reservist. Is that what you said?
Well, when you put it that way, Larry, yeah, it kind of sounds like a pretty funny story to say.
Well,
So
it's funny you say that. I'm gonna give you a quick story of a friend of mine how he came in. He was a guy who lived in the the UP, Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Guy hunted his own food, had a farm, all that kind of good stuff. He's got a wife, loves his wife. He goes off and hunt for 2 days, come back. All of a sudden, wife doesn't like what he's doing, hates this lifestyle. They're fighting. He goes off, comes back. When he comes back from a couple days, she's in bed with her yoga teacher. He's literally got his hunting rifle with him. And he says, I'm going to count to 10. And I'm going to shoot anybody still in this house. And he counted to 10. And when he was done, they were gone. He never saw her again. Yeah. She divorced him. He was in complete and absolute depression, a disaster, living out of his car, lost everything, walked outside, saw a Marine Corps poster and said, what the hell? He became Marine.
Yeah, and that's normally where people come from in the Marine Corps. Uncle Sam's misguided children,
That's correct. Yes, absolutely.
But we come from every walk of life. And so to get back to where I was, the reservist band member.
You're going to play the flute in the band in the reserves. Go ahead.
Saxophone, but all right.
Saxophone. That's cooler. You get some cool points for sax. All right, I'll give you that.
All right. And not just any sax. I could play the baritone, the big one.
All right.
So I had that going for me, but then I kept going to all the poolie events and all the little things they do. And
for those who know what a poolie event is that's an event that people go to, usually monthly. If you're ready to, you signed up and you're going to eventually go in to keep you motivated, you go to poolie events.
Correct. And so I'd go there and I'd see all the guys coming out of boot camp in their uniforms and the different jobs they're going to go do. And And then one day I was living with my grandma. I had about, maybe 6 months before I was supposed to go to boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I broke up with a girlfriend I was dating at the time. And I walked out to my grandma's living room and I said, Grandma, why am I going to the reserves? I mean, I'm going to be 20 years old because I joined when I was 20. I'm going to be 20. I got my whole life ahead of me.
This guy was 26 when he joined.
Yeah, you can go from 17 to I think, what is it, 30 something?
33.
Yeah, 33. Yep. So I asked her and she calls me Rusty, the red and all that. And I had red up here by then, but so she goes, Rusty, I don't know. Why are you going reserves? I said, Grandma, I honestly don't know. So I went back to my recruiter and I'll never forget it. It was Staff Sergeant Allen. And I said, Staff Sergeant, I don't really want to be in the band anymore. What kind of jobs do you have if I want to go active duty? And he's like, well, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't really know, but what did you do before you were a recruiter? And he said, I was a 1371 combat engineer.
Yep.
And I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, that means I blow stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sign me up for that.
Yeah. There we go. I like that.
And so
it's funny you say that. When I went, my story, when I joined the Marine Corps, I actually was going to join the Army because my father was in the Army. And I was going to copy my father. So I was going to go join the Army. I go to Army recruiter just like you did. And he promised me the world. He was like, you're going to be a general in like a month, and you're going to travel the world and meet hot women, and we're going to get you a PhD in like a year, and it's all free. We're going to give you everything in the world. And I was ready. I was still in high school. I was 17 years old. I had all the book covers and the bumper stickers, Go Army, all that stuff. I walk outside, and the Marine Corps recruiter is sitting there with his arms like this. He says, hey, son, you just check out the Army guy? I said, yeah. He said, you got a minute? I said, sure. Brings me inside. He goes, an Army guy, he promised you a whole lot, didn't he? I said, yeah, I'm going to be a general in like a month. I'm going to be running the Army, meeting hot women, traveling the world. I'm going to get a PhD in like a week. It's going to be great. And he said, oh, that's great. He goes, you know what we call that? I said, what? He said, we call it the solar plan. Everything under the sun. He said, you know what I'm going to promise you? I said, what? He said, 4 hard years. Are you ready? I said, yes. And I signed up. That's how I became Marine.
Awesome. But see, that's the thing. It's all backgrounds, all people coming from different reasonings, logics, and to be perfectly honest, I honestly had no idea what a combat engineer really was.
Sure.
You know that little guy in the Army little figurine plastic set with the Minesweeper? That would be like my job. So
sure, right, yes, absolutely.
yeah, the one that nobody really likes to play with.
So let me move then. You join the Marine Corps, you get out, you go to Combat Engineer School, right? Where was that? That's gotta be in the South somewhere, Georgia?
So I went to Camp Pendleton and San Diego for boot camp.
Okay, so you didn't go to real boot camp.
Okay. Okay. We'll just let that one pass because it's your show, sir. And so,
okay.
so
you went to Hollywood boot camp. I got it.
Yes, and I hiked up more hills than I care to remember.
Yes.
And just like I'm sure you have more sand flea scars than you care to count.
Absolutely. We were in the swamps. Yep.
Right, for sure. So, I went to MCT in Camp Pendleton, and then I went to Combat Engineer School at Fort Lejeune at Courthouse Bay.
Oh, is that right? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I thought it was in Georgia. Okay.
No. So it's a Courthouse Bay in Camp Lejeune, and I was there for the hot summer, and into the rainy season, and we hiked with the red flags, the black flags going, and
absolutely
we learned everything. We marched everywhere we went. We learned how to.
So let me get past that. I want to move to when do you do your first tour in Iraq?
Okay, so I go from Camp Lejeune at engineer school, and I get actually I was supposed to go to Beaufort, South Carolina.
Oh my God, that's Parris Island.
Or not Beaufort. What is it? What's the one that's not Beaufort? Is it Beaufort? All right, I'm
right by Parris Island.
Right. Okay, so it's the one right by Parris Island.
Yep.
Correct. So you go. I was supposed to go there, but I ended up switching with a guy to go to 1st Combat Engineer Battalion on Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
And that's like it went from being in the air wing to being in the division.
I did both. I know exactly. Big difference.
Huge difference.
Big
and not
difference.
only
when I was in I spent my first tour only on the ground side with artillery and infantry. Then my second tour was with the air wing. I was a good sergeant, not amazing, but a good sergeant. When I went to the air wing, I was like combat hardcore sergeant because people in the air wing were not hardcore like the ground side. It was a different environment.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that's different in between division and air wing for combat engineers is that when you go to a division unit, there were at that time, there currently is now, but there were no women. It was all men. It was all masculinity and being that tough Marine. And now
I was in the ground side in the 80s.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there were no women where I was. None.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now I'm pleased to say that 1st Combat Engineer Battalion has women in it, and they have a battalion commander that is a woman. They've had that, so it's come a long way since I've gotten out.
Absolutely.
But to get to where I was with 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, there's a little backstory to this. See, I was one of those Marines that has 2 NJPs under my belt.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, yeah, for sure. So drinking, underage kind of thing, and alcohol playing a huge role. And when you're in the barracks life and you're new,
Marines getting drunk. What?
Correct. But in this case, it was Marines getting drunk and abusive and abusing their authority, and it wasn't what I originally signed up to be. And so I got in some trouble there, and when I got out of that trouble, I got my NJP, my first one. And
for those who don't know what NJP is, that's non-judicial punishment. That is a punishment that the local unit can do that does not bring it to the level of court-martial.
Correct.
That's what that is. Those you don't know, it is not also known as an Article 15.
Correct. So it's not like I'm being court-martialed. That's a great point to make. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you. So I served my first NJP punishment, 45, and loss of pay. You know how that goes.
Yep.
And then I lost my rank. And so I was just about to pick up Lance Corporal before it happened. So I went from PFC back to private, and I'm the lowest man in the whole battalion. I'm the lowest on the totem pole. And then I got off that restriction, and then I got caught with alcohol in the barracks as a E1. So instantly I'm in trouble again.
Yes.
Sign me up for another NJP, 45 more, half my pay. They can't take any more rank from me.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're like, NJP again for you. Well, I've always been told that Chesty Polar says a Marine with an NJP is just a Marine you want to have a beer with. So
I like it.
So, I did that, I told one of the staff NCOs on duty one night when my restriction was coming to an end, and I really had no idea what I was going to do. They had a guy that was supposed to deploy with him. His name is Staff Sergeant Grant, and I sat down on the steps, and he sat down there with me, and he just leveled with me as like a human, not just a staff sergeant.
Yep.
Like a human, a man to man, to say, you got to figure it out. Well, I have this opening in my platoon. Would you be willing to, if you want to and willing to, would you want to join us, and we'll take you? And he said, and I said, absolutely. I would love to. And he said, well, you got to go talk to First Sergeant. And at the time, it was First Sergeant Smythe. And so I walked into First Sergeant's office, and he said, so I heard you want to go to Iraq. And I said, yes, sir. I really need to make a name that's more than just the guy with 2 NJPs with a drinking problem.
Yep.
And so I volunteered to go with 1st Combat Engineer Battalion Charlie Company Route Clearance Platoon. And I got put into my new platoon. They are called the Dirty 30. Mm-hmm. And, I'll tell you what, some of the greatest men that most people will never hear of.
So hold on. So you head on over to Iraq. You volunteer to go there, which many people don't know. A lot of people volunteer to go there. Mm-hmm. When I was in the during the first Gulf War, and I volunteered to go to the first Gulf War. I was training people to sending them over, so I volunteered to go. But the war was over so fast, my unit never went.
Right.
But that was 1991. So back in those days. But in any case, so you head over there. You're in Iraq, right? So I want to know, when you get to Iraq, is this a base already established? Are you guys creating your own base? What kind of build out is here?
All right, so this was in 2007. So this was
the bases are built.
So yeah, so we were started at a place called Al Asad Air Base in Iraq, in the Al Anbar province, and our job was to take Huskies, Cougars, and Buffaloes, the MRAPs, and a 7-ton.
Those are all vehicles, by the way, guys.
Correct. Route clearance, all up armored vehicles minus the 7-ton, which we'll get to later. And, we trained to find a bomb. The Husky's the one that is a moving metal detector. It finds the bomb. And then the Buffalo comes up, digs it up, and the Cougars are like your security vehicles.
Yep.
And then the 7-tons are maintenance vehicles. So, I just remember being the lowest man on the totem pole. Everybody above you is higher than you. So, it's yes, PFC, yes, Lance Corporal, yes, all the way up the chain.
Absolutely.
And so I got promoted. I started getting some rank. By the time I left Iraq, I was a Lance Corporal.
But let me go through the time of you're in Iraq. You spent a year there or 15 months?
9 months.
9 months.
9 months and like a week or so.
So you had a shorter one. Okay, so you got 9 months there. When you're there, tell me, what was your worst day?
Larry, do you know who played in the Super Bowl in 2008? It's February 3rd, 2008. You should know this, being from New York.
2008. Was that the Giants?
The Giants and the Patriots. Now, the only reason why I know that is because I Googled it before the show.
Okay.
On Super Bowl Sunday 2008, while most Americans are getting ready to watch the Super Bowl, I was hit with a roadside bomb. It was the first attack in our platoon. Myself, my corporal, and a Lance Corporal were all hit in the 7-ton truck. It's not a armored vehicle, but we were lucky enough to where we had a mine roller, and it took most of the damage. But being the turret gunner behind a Mark 19 grenade launcher, and the turret level comes up to about here up to your shoulder level, and then we've got some HESCO netting. And some wire to make a sun shield or whatnot, and some camo netting. And so when the bomb went off, the concussion blast knocked me unconscious. I don't know how long I was out for.
So there's only 3 of you in the vehicle?
Three of us.
You, a driver, you the gunner, and driver.
Yeah, myself, the driver, and then the vehicle commander.
Okay.
And so it knocked me out. I don't know for how long. My vehicle commander got hurt. My driver obviously got hurt. It was a pretty decent sized blast.
So hold on. Let me go back here. Hold on 1 second. How long had you been in Iraq?
At that point, let's see, September. My birthday was my first day in Iraq. So October, November, December, January. So almost going on 5 months there.
5 months. Okay,
in our
so
5th month.
So, were you ready for this emotionally or no? Were you like, was stuff so easy that's what I thought. You're not ready for this.
No.
You're not getting explosions every day. So this is a big deal for you.
Correct. It was the first one that we had a vehicle get hit.
Yep.
So it was obviously shell shock, whatever you want to call it. My shoulder was dislocated out of its socket. I just remember, I can't remember if it was Corporal Weebush or if it was Watson saying it's okay to cry, but I mean, I even shed a tear that day because, I mean, honestly, I almost died. I could have. I mean,
so the bomb goes off, you get a concussion. Do you remember or not whether this was an ambush or a single bomb?
This was a single attack. This was just something just laid out there, and again, we're lucky there was no secondaries. They cleared all that, but I vaguely remember parts of the day. There was a rumor that I had soiled my cami bottoms, but I've later had that debunked by people that are like, no, dude, you didn't. But either way, nobody can prepare you for what you experience when you're hit by a roadside bomb. And to know, in my line of field, we've seen all the videos of explosions and people getting destroyed. And so when you kind of live through even just what I would say is a minor, by comparison to what I've seen, it still affects you. It still messes with your brain. I mean, years later, they tell me I've got microfractures on the left side of my brain and my skull that could be causing issues for me. And so, I still deal with that. So the worst day in Iraq was for me personally was that day. Yep. But after that, we had more.
Hold on, let me stay there. You had two other people. You had the driver and the commander. What happened to the driver?
Again, they both had their injuries. Neither one were, well, we kind of wonder if my vehicle commander was knocked out. I can't verify either of it for him because I was the guy out. But we all survived, and I will say my vehicle commander and the driver are two of some of the greatest two people I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, and they truly. Our platoon was one where we always fought like brothers, but we also had that love for each other like brothers.
Sure, absolutely.
And so I miss it every day. But
I was going to ask that question too. But it's okay. Let me move down the road if I could. You get hit. Obviously, they take you to sick bay. They got to pop your shoulder back in. How long were you out?
Actually,
out of duty.
I popped my own shoulder back in.
You popped your own shoulder back. Of course you did.
And well, I mean, it's either that or let it stick out.
I know.
So we drove all the way back to the base.
So the vehicle was still drivable.
Yeah, it was the mine roller that took most of the damage.
Okay.
So then that's what they're designed for. So to be honest, but the way that the mine roller hit it, we were going up a hill, so that blast was angled up. So the mine roller took most of the damage, but that concussion blast is what knocked me out. Okay. And I mean, I've got a piece of, I should have brought it out for this interview, but I got a piece of metal that looks like a twisted cone that landed in the turret. And I just think to myself, all that had to do was just be a micro fraction over with that explosion, and that thing could have went through my head. So
absolutely,
I'm grateful every day I'm alive. Make no mistake about it. So, but to move on to that, I was awarded the Purple Heart for that, and and that's something that a lot of people, they don't realize that. People go, oh, you have a Purple Heart. Where's your injuries?
Right.
And you have that stigma for your whole time. Like, well, you're not missing a limb. I don't see burns and scars. And it's like, yeah, but if you could look in my brain and what happened to it.
This is the piece I bring up often with people, is that when someone has a loss of a limb or something like that, then the injury is obvious. But for so many of us who are veterans of combat, not myself, but many veterans who are combat veterans, the damage is, you can't see it, right? It's not obvious. You can't see it. It's either TBI or it's PTSD.
So
or all of those things.
I was diagnosed with TBI, PTSD, and to get to your question, I was out for a month.
A month, okay.
And so, and that's because they basically say your brain can't handle another explosion, and the migraines and the loss of appetite and the blurry vision and all these things that happen, and it happens out of the blue. One day you'll be sitting there and you'll be fine talking with somebody, and then before you know it, some light stresses you out and you've got a migraine and you're out for the rest of the day.
Yep.
You know, so after a month, I was brought back into my platoon. I mean, I was still in contact with them, obviously.
Sure.
And, you know, again, just a bunch of hardworking guys out there finding bombs in the ground. They had some vehicle hits. I mean, we took damage. It wasn't just my vehicle. We had multiple people, multiple vehicles get hit, destroyed. I mean, if I had my pictures available right now, I'd just show you a whole display of my time there. But
well, let me change the subject if I could. That was your worst day. What was your best?
Leaving. Everybody's alive.
So you went there for 9 months, no KIA.
No KIA.
Amazing. Well done.
And especially in our line of work.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
So,
yes.
I mean, I remember playing poker and all that stuff, but to get to your point, before I leave Iraq, there's a very clear point I need to make before we get there. My platoon's last mission, I'm probably going to get in trouble by my fellow platoon mates when they see this, if they see this, when I say this, but our last mission, we dubbed Dick Cheney's oil run.
Oh
and to be perfectly honest, once you realize what it is and what the mainstream media tells you what it is, you go, well, honestly, they're lying to you all. And it's the first time you really wake up and
tell me what that is. Tell me why you called it Dick Cheney's oil run. Tell me why. First
and foremost, Halliburton's out there, and you feel all your vehicles up, and you've got all these contractors going on, and they're all tied to Dick Cheney out there. For some reason, it was allowed during a time of war. Everybody was just knew Dick Cheney was in charge of all this stuff at one point. And so they just finished reconnecting a railroad all the way from a oil refinery to Al-Assad. And our last mission was to escort that oil train from an Iraqi oil refinery to a U.S.-held airbase where that oil would be used for our purposes. So you cannot tell me nobody on the world, on the internet can even tell me that this was not an oil war in Iraq. And also other resources, political reasons, but the oil itself and the way that we went after it, and for it to be our last mission was really like a slap in the face, the first wake up. And I remember there's a video floating out there somewhere of a few of my sergeants complaining about it left and right, because this is not what we're here for.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was my first wake up. So we get back from Iraq.
I'm not done. You got to stay with me. Let me stay with you. I'm not done.
Okay.
The first your year in Iraq. Who was the oddest Marine you met? Don't give me his name.
I will give you his name because I'll tell you right now. If he watches this video, Tony Cole is one of the greatest Marines that ever lived.
Tony, you just got outed.
Yeah, no, Tony, I can't find the man. For the life of me, I can say to this internet, Tony Cole, if you're out there, you're missing your best friend here. And so, or at least I miss him. So, you know, he was the funniest Marine I think I ever met. There was one time we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're in a little cop out in the middle of nowhere. We're just surrounded by concertina wire, circled up with vehicles, and we all have been on this.
Wire for you guys is the barbed wire, the circle wire that you see all the time. That's the wire he's talking about.
Correct. So we had all been in the vehicles for so long. We're pulling in at the dead of night. It's pitch black, no moon, and he gets out of the vehicle. We all get out of the vehicles. We're trying to find some chow. Where can we get some grub? We're all going to be sleeping under the stars, or there's a little Connex box we can all sleep in, and it's like, all right.
Connex box, by the way, guys, is a very large box used in the back of trains or trucks.
Correct.
You can open up and go inside, almost like the big boxes you see on the being shipped on shipping containers.
Correct. So Tony gets out and he's like, I gotta go to the bathroom, man. I gotta go to the bathroom. And they're like, oh, well, there's a little outhouse over there. You can go over there and use that. And so he goes taking off running, and me and the doc are just walking up slowly because we're like, well, we don't know what's going on. We see people up there. And I open the door and I open up this thing and I see this toilet seat on 4 stands. And I'm like, I look at my doc and I go, how are we supposed to use this? And the guy on the other corner goes, you just grab a wag bag out there off the side, you put it over the seat, and then you use the wag bag to catch your droppings, and then close it up and put it on the other side, and we dispose of it. And I was like, oh, okay. And we look over one that Cole's in, and we go, you didn't use a wag bag, did you?
That's right there.
And he goes, nah, man, I just saw a toilet seat, sat down and took a dump. And
There we go.
So after MRE meals constantly, he gave birth to a lovely turd. And he's like I said, it's all like having a brother. And so yeah.
Literally, you decided to tell this guy Tony, and the story you told was him taking a massive shit. That was the story you told.
But it's the funniest story from Iraq.
It is a funny story.
I mean, I could go into many more, but that's probably the most family-friendly story I could tell.
Oh, that's the family-friendly one. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I got you.
Yeah.
So let me ask another question. Who was the most interesting non-Marine that you met in that year?
Okay. Non-Marine. Okay, so when I was in that 30-day window of not being able to go out and outside the wire, I was in chow hall duty. They're like, go make sure nobody comes in without clearing their weapon first, and if they leave, make sure they dump their trash and that they're not doing anything they're not supposed to. I can do that. I can do the little clicker for how many people come in, and I even ran a poll. It's actually in one of the articles in the mainstream. It's called the Private and the President, and people were actually saying I look like Bill Clinton at the time. And and they ran a poll like how many people thought I looked like Bill Clinton. But anyways, one of the coolest people I met was actually from Nepal.
Oh, okay.
And he came from Nepal, worked as a contractor, just doing as people got their trays, he'd take their tray, dump it, and he'd make sure that all the trays got done. And I'd sit there, and he spoke a little English.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know him and the other guy that was there a lot more quiet, didn't speak any English, so we didn't really get to know each other. But the guy from Nepal was he reminded me like in that instance that we're all in this war zone together. We'd all much rather be with our families, but we're here because this is where our lives have led us. And I haven't seen the man since, obviously, but just to know that there's people out there that were just going to the war zone just because they needed a job.
Right.
Not to even serve in a combat role.
So you're actually showing that war actually is also a jobs program.
Yeah, for sure. And it's got a huge, we used to say the contractors make more than an entire squad.
Yes.
And so like the guy that watches the guys clean the toilets and the showers and on Al-Assad, he makes more than all of us combined.
Right.
And all the guys that are working cleaning those showers make less than a private.
Right.
And so he's making $150,000, $200,000 a year to just watch people clean bathrooms.
Right.
If that doesn't tell you about waste, fraud, and abuse, I don't know what does. But if you had to ask me, there's also good times. I mean, I was able to.
No. I got you. I want to bring something else if I could. Of the 9 months you spent there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from it? As now you're looking back with hindsight, right? But I'm asking not hindsight. I'm asking then. As you're going away, did you guys leave by, I'm assuming you left by plane?
Yeah, of course.
So you're hopping on your plane, you got your gear wrapped up in the plane, you're wrapped up in the plane, you're sitting there taking off. What'd you learn?
Anybody can die at any moment. Appreciate the moments that you have.
Mm-hmm.
That war is not what anybody thinks it is. It's in the famous words, war is hell. It is, but it's also what you make it to in the aspect of how you personally can grow. I met incredible people, learned incredible lessons from, to put me back into the spot if you're on the plane leaving. I learned that you should be able to. I learned after the first day when we get back and on U.S. soil and we're there and I see all of civilization, as you'd call it again, driving down the freeway over by Riverside, California, and I go, man, I really hope that we have the freedoms that they say that we are protecting from what we're going over there and doing. Because when you see the lies and you see it, then you start to question, even when you're in, whether or not your service is really serving the American people's interests. And so lesson I learned from Iraq would be that it's not what they're telling us. And so I had to learn how to, again, keep that part of my aspect to myself, because being, again, the lowest man on the totem pole, it's not like anybody's going, hey there, Lance Corporal Abernathy, what do you think about the war?
Absolutely, yes.
So,
Absolutely.
But, I learned that people are resilient, tough. I mean, I've watched people get blown up and get injured worse than myself and still get up and grind and do their job and teach. And so I learned in that instance how to become that person essentially for the next Marine. I saw how my corporals treated me, and I learned what kind of NCO I wanted to be if I would ever become one. I mean,
for those of you, NCO is a non-commissioned officer.
Correct. Which I had
the rank of E4 and above in the military.
Correct. So I had a sergeant major when I got NJP'd the first time. His name was Sergeant Major Green, and he used to call me Abernathy. And he'd go, Abernathy, Abernathy, Abernathy. What am I going to do about you there, devil dog? You're never going to pick up the rank of corporal in my Marine Corps if you keep messing around with that alcohol. Well, happy to say, I got back from Iraq, and I decided again to that, I obviously wanted to continue down helping to train Marines. I want to get further into the route clearance job. Sure. So I became a plank owner, for those that don't know, an original member of a company called Mobility Assault Company, as we call it, MAC, and I was first platoon, and I was the only Marine other than Cole at that time. He was still with me, and for a brief moment he was with me until he got transferred out, and I became a senior lance, as they call it, and all the guys that were coming into this platoon had come from a MU, a Marine Expeditionary Unit, guys that go out on floats. That
but you're in Pendleton, so that means they were out in East Asia.
Well, they would go out to like Australia, and they'd go out to Japan, and they'd go out to the Philippines, all that, and so they all that new platoon came from mainly that, and we had nobody other than the corpsman that had deployed before. So all of a sudden...
Hold on one second. For those of you who know what a corpsman is, the Marine Corps does not, because of Geneva Convention, every Marine is a basic rifleman. And because of Geneva Convention, the Marine Corps cannot have any medical personnel or any chaplains because they would have to be riflemen. So we borrow them, literally we borrow them from the Navy. Any medical personnel in the Marine Corps are Navy, and they're called corpsmen. There are medics or are doctors. And any chaplain are also borrowed from the Navy. They're Navy chaplains. So when he says corpsman, he means the medics who are stationed with the Marines.
Correct. And so all of a sudden I go from being the turd, the lowest bottom of the totem pole, to now the only guy that's deployed in my platoon.
Yep.
That's an actual combat deployment, minus, again, the corpsman. So all of a sudden I find myself thrust into a role where I'm now having a squad leader, but now I've got a fire team, and then I've got my guys, and we got to train, because guess what? We found out we're going to Afghanistan. And
so that one you didn't volunteer for. You volunteered for the unit, but you didn't volunteer to go to Afghanistan. Did you know they wouldn't go to Afghanistan? Was that obvious?
Well, we were going to train to go to Iraq, and then they switched it to Afghanistan when Obama pushed the next surge into Afghanistan.
So let me ask you a serious question at this point. You're a little disenchanted by what happened. Why'd you want to go back?
Because again, it's not at that point. I still have time in my service. It's not my choice. It's not like I can say, "Oh, don't want to participate anymore. I'm out of this." So I viewed it as that opportunity, that continuation of the redemption from when I was in trouble and getting in that trouble. So I just decided I'm going to be that guy that I wanted to be. So I actually picked up the rank of corporal, which again was incredible, because again, after 4 years, when you get told you've been NJP twice, you'll never pick up corporal.
Yeah, I know, it's tough. Absolutely.
Picking up corporal was most likely the greatest non-combat experience that I had, because it was the final proof that I can make a comeback from a time that, and I still had a year and a half left to be a corporal.
Nice.
So I went and got in trouble all that first year of trouble. And then I picked up corporal and still had a year and a half left. So 2.5 years of working it back, and a year getting in trouble, working it back, and you get what I'm saying. I had a year and a half to be a corporal, and I then became licensed, one of the first few in the Marine Corps to be licensed to drive the Buffalo, which is the up armored MRAP that digs up the bombs.
Yep.
I got to train Marines to dig up roadside bombs. I went to training in Fort Leonard Wood, back in Camp Lejeune at engineer school. We went and did.
Is this before or after you went to Afghanistan?
This is before Afghanistan. This is leading up to Afghanistan. Okay. And so I went and did all this training, and we built our teams. And again, just another great group of guys, like a brotherhood where, yeah, infighting happens, but we take care of our own. And
absolutely.
We built that relationship where everybody trusted everyone to do their jobs. And, you know, my vehicle commander, he actually passed, he was killed on his next deployment after ours. Was one of the greatest men I've ever met. We named our vehicle Mater after the Cars character because his kids liked the Cars tomato. Character. I know. They liked, and we were like Mater. We were like Tomato without the T. And we sat there and just a great guy and very much the leader that I had wished that if I would have stayed in I could have become. And he.
So hold on, let me go now. You know you're heading back to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
When you get the orders and orders come down, you know unit's going to deploy. How long were you going to deploy for? Was that 9 months again?
Okay, so real quick before we get to Afghanistan, I had surgery. I had this giant bulge in my neck right here that was sticking out after I came back from Iraq, and they were like, the doc was like, "Hey, you got this thing in your neck. We got to cut it out before we can clear you medically to go anywhere." And so it turns out I had this massive, what do you call it, goiter on your thyroid. And so I don't know if you can see the scar on here. No, you can't see it under the light. But I have a scar across my neck where they slit me open and took out this massive goiter. And so I get to Afghanistan, and we were supposed to be there for 9 months. I was there for 1 day under 31, so I didn't qualify for the, the NATO medal. But I was there for 30 days. I started getting sick, like really sick in Afghanistan. But before we get to my departure from Afghanistan, let me get to Afghanistan.
Okay.
We train up to Afghanistan, and we just switch from going, okay, guys, well, we're not going to Iraq. We still have a road. There's still going to be bombs.
Yep.
We got to dig these things up. Afghanistan in 30 days was more intense than Iraq in 9 months.
Wow.
Our first day out with the platoon we replaced, we found a roadside bomb. It was like,
hold on now. Your unit deploys. Does your unit deploy as a company, as a battalion, as a regiment? How does it deploy?
Company, and
as a company. Okay.
And so that was Camp Bastion in the Helmut province. That was a British, really kind of controlled camp at the point. Got to go to the British PXs. Those are really cool. They have all the cigarettes that have all the diseases on the front, and you're like, ugh, maybe I don't want to smoke, but I got to stay awake.
The PX is basically the base store.
Yeah, and so
PX stands for post exchange.
Yes, sir. And so we get to Afghanistan, and we're one of the first platoons in. Our company really isn't there yet. And they're building this massive base. They're building it out there.
Oh, so this time you don't have a base already. Now you're in the process of building the base.
We're pigging it back off of the British base.
Yeah,
and we got our own little section there. And they've got our own little thing where they're like, that's where the Americans stay. And then they have, there's at each base there was a common area where people could go and do their supplies and get their goodies and whatnot. But, we'd go there and we'd have pizza, which is probably goat meat out in the middle of nowhere. With a bunch of British soldiers, and we got there, and like I said, it was going out and doing the same thing we did in Iraq, finding bombs in the ground and doing our job. And then at the end of the day, like I said, I started getting sick, and it was to the point where I couldn't effectively do my job. I couldn't drive a vehicle as big as the Buffalo in a combat zone, digging up bombs and being constantly getting sick the way I was and not able to, because if you have somebody that gets that sick and is unable to perform the function of their job, and then
you affect others.
I affect others. So then I started getting sick, but then they tell me, well, you need to go to medical. Well, they open up my medical record and they're like, you would never approve to go to Afghanistan. But I'm like, I'm already in Afghanistan. What do you mean I'm not approved to go to Afghanistan? I'm in Afghanistan with you right now. I'm sure that if I wasn't approved to go to Afghanistan, somebody would have caught me along the way and said, hey, guy, you're not going.
Right.
And so they were like, well, no, we need to send you to Longstuhl, Germany. First they wanted to send me to
that's the army base, isn't it?
Yeah. And they wanted to send me up to a base up north. It was held. in Afghanistan in the mountains, which when I got there, they're like, at any moment we could be mortared and you might die. So just be prepared for that. And I was like, oh, okay. But they're like, then I get there and the doctor's like, we don't have the equipment we need to do what you're needing done to get clearance to go back to find bombs in the ground. And so I ended up going to Longstuhl, Germany, the army base there, and I meet up with the Marine liaison, and I go, okay, well, what now? And he goes, well, welcome to the black hole. You're never going to go back to a combat zone now. And I sat there for 2.5 weeks begging doctors to clear me to go back to a combat zone, and none of them would put their signature on paperwork saying I could go back and find bombs in the ground in an active war zone because my brain can't handle that stuff. And I wasn't cleared to go back. So it was this huge controversy for a while there in my life where I'm begging to go back to Afghanistan, but the natural instinct of people being terrible people is to assume you just don't want to participate. I'm like, I volunteered to go to Iraq. I'm sitting here leading Marines, teaching them how to dig up bombs. And just because I'm sick, I mean, I had surgery just to say I could get cleared. And then I get to launch.
I want to bring this up. This is an important piece to understand. A lot of people, civilians in particular, they don't understand the desire that many Marines and soldiers and sailors have to go into a combat zone. It would seem like you wouldn't want to do that. Why would you want to do that? And the example I often give is, what if you were a lawyer and you had gone to law school and you trained to be a lawyer and then they never let you go into court? Well, then why am I trained to be a lawyer for years and years and years if I can't go into a courtroom? Why am I doing that? Why am I trained to be a doctor if I can't see patients?
I mean,
well, why am I trained to be a Marine if I can't go into combat?
Right. And especially when you're a combat engineer. And so, that was the thing that got to me.
What actually turned me in my own story was actually not being able to go to combat. That's when I began to rethink everything. Because when the first Gulf War came, and I literally, your monitor is, right? People know the monitor is the person who decides where you get stationed, right? You by your MOS, by your job title, right? Where you go. And the funny part is, because I was a platoon sergeant in a schools unit in training, I had access. I was in Fort Belvoir, right by DC. So I had people who could actually call up my monitor, just call them up and ask them. Yeah. So I literally called them up. And I said, look, send me to, in this case, I was going to go to Saudi. That's where we were staging in Saudi to go into Iraq in the 90s, right? So I was like, send me to Saudi. I don't care. I'll go back to my old unit if you can't send me. He's like, no, you are so motivated, Sergeant Sharpe. You are so motivated. We're going to keep you in schools because you got to train the reservists because they don't want to go. Yeah. So you're going to train them so that they will go. Right. So when that happened, I said to myself, I want to go. I was an active duty Marine wanting to go to combat. And the system said, no, because most people don't want to go. So we're going to have you motivate reservists who have jobs, who have families and don't want to go. Yeah. You're going to motivate them.
That's a challenge.
Yes, that was my job during the first Gulf War. Wow. Was motivating them to go to fight.
Well, let me finish off Afghanistan. And I got something that'll relate to that, Larry.
Go ahead, please.
So real quick, what really bothered me the most about Afghanistan, again, other than the fact that you're just in this miserable situation, you've already questioned your government. One of the things that bothered me the most was the fact that we protected poppy fields. For those that don't know, poppy is what creates opioids.
Yep.
And then what you notice is that we're now clearing bombs around large as far as the eye can see poppy fields and going, wait a minute, why are we protecting opioids?
Yes.
And then come to find out all these fields you see from eye to eye are being grown for the United States government for pharmaceutical contracts.
Yep.
Guess what? They're bringing all of this to the United States and then telling you, the American people, there's an opioid crisis.
Yep.
And now you see it on the news. We have an opioid crisis. It's like, yeah, but you guys are flying it in. I just yes. protected the fields that you just harvested to create the pills that you get Americans addicted to. And so that was the final straw for me. I decided at that point, I am not re-enlisting. 4 years and 2 deployments to 2 combat zones regardless of if it was for a month or a full time. I did a full time in Iraq. I've done my service. But so I got brought back to my unit from Longstrel, Germany. They're like, nope, you're not going. We're sending you back. They sent me to San Diego. All the doctors poked and prodded. They're like, yeah, your brain is terrible. You should probably not get blown up again. It'd be really recommended you don't get blown up again. So
Good. I'm glad they recommended that. Otherwise, I knew you were going to get blown up again. But
right. Well, I mean, and you hope not, obviously. But again, nobody in that platoon of mine got killed in combat as well. Again, but there were of many people that were injured, Purple Hearts for sure. And it's crazy to me that's what we go through, but I'm grateful that none of them were killed, obviously. But back in 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, the controversy of, he just didn't want to, deploy again. It's like, why would I go all the way there just to get sent all the way back? Like, come on. And so finally, First Sergeant Catalini goes, he's mad at me. Devil dog, blah, I'm going to NJP you. I'm going to put you down to private again. And I was just terrified. Like, here I just built up this redemption of being that Marine I was supposed to be. Well, he had me feeling like, I'm going to nail you to the cross. Well, my doctors came to my rescue and told him, no, he asked us every step of the way, send me back to Afghanistan, because if you don't, First Sergeant Catalini's going to do exactly what he's doing to me right now. And so, and First Sergeant Catalini, again, I believe he's a sergeant major now, but he gave me that apology, and it made me realize that there's a line that you cross as a senior staff NCO where you have that prestige. Even a staff NCO, you have that prestige to a corporal that they look to you and go, if I stay in, is this what I'm going to become?
Yep.
And so when he kind of came at me like that, I was just really shocked. And so to have that backup from the doctor saying, no, he can't take more hits like this. His line of work is too dangerous for him. And so what they did was they put me in headquarters and service battalion.
Of course they did.
Where I became a company clerk.
Of course.
And they said, we're going to make you a brig chaser. You know what a brig chaser is, Larry?
I know I was one, taking guys to the brig and back. I was that.
We did the same exact job. You wake up at 3 in the morning.
I know HQ. Yes, you got to have the plastic things and two-man integrity and the whole thing. I know.
We did the same job, Larry.
Absolutely.
And so they put me in as the guy that and at that time, because our whole combat unit was deploying, our whole battalion was deploying, a lot of people were getting in trouble.
Of course.
And a lot of people are doing things they shouldn't have been. So we had the number one amount of Marines in the brig on Camp Pendleton at that time. So I was constantly getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning in Southern California here in San Clemente, driving down to the barracks on Main Side from, in the duty van, getting there by 5:30, picking up the guy that, did XYZ, and taking him to chow, getting him in his uniforms, always having a lance corporal with you.
Absolutely.
And just nonstop. I was the guy and I was supposed to motivate the guys that, they were just getting a little NJP. Come on, CJ, you had 2 of them. Look at you, you're a corporal,
right,
2 combat tours. Like you can go and you can motivate these guys to stay in. And I tried, I really did. But they said so I did that for the last few months of my time in the Marine Corps. And I got asked.
But you got out because of what you saw in your future, right? And you were like, I don't really want that future.
I'm not gonna go participate in your oil and poppy wars. Like I'm not gonna go lie to my family and it's not me protecting your constitutional rights. It's me out there putting my body on the line to protect opioids. Why would I go do that? And oil. Yeah, yes, for sure. And so why would I do that? So, once a Marine, always a Marine. It don't matter if you serve 4 or your entire time until you retire as an old devil dog. But at the end of the day, I go back to, if it was all a lie, why would I still continue to participate? I did my 4 years. I did my contract. Yeah. I'm getting out. They said, we'll make you Sergeant Abernathy. And you can pick where you want to go. I said, I'm going to college and I'm going to be Mr. Abernathy. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yes. And I had a similar issue when I was a staff sergeant in 7 years, and I was going to get out, and they were like, "Well, Larry, Sergeant, we'll make you an officer," because I had a choice. I got a college degree while I was in. I could have gone to officer school, or they would have given me, believe it or not, embassy duty.
Oh, no.
So I was going to guard an embassy as a staff sergeant, which
A glorified doorman?
It's the only time as a staff sergeant you go to a smaller unit where you're officially an officer because there's no officers around.
Correct. And
So
what do they call it? It's you're doing the job, but you're getting
it's called frocked.
Frocked. That's
Yes,
the word.
it's called frocked, yes.
Yes, frocking.
So
yeah.
They were giving me that option, and you can go to officer school, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm out. I got my college degree. I've done my 7 years. I did the first 3.5 years on the ground, last 3.5 years in the air wing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I was going to say that I was looking ahead and seeing what was my future, and I didn't think it was a future that I wanted, and I was very disenchanted after the first Gulf War, and I was disenchanted. I didn't believe anymore, if that makes any sense, right? When I first came in, and I know you feel the same thing. When you first come in, you believe it, right? You believe it. You're like,
hook, line,
yes,
and sinker.
Absolutely. You believe it.
You earn that title. You wear the dress blues for the first time. You're looking sharp in your uniform. Oh, I'll tell you what, I miss those days for sure.
I say that sometimes, right? When I was 17, 18, 19 years old, life was actually easier for me. It was simpler. It was black and white. The American government was always right, and who was wrong was whoever they told me I should hate.
Correct.
And that's who's the bad guy. I don't gotta think. They've done it all for me. It's amazing.
Yeah, and
yes.
One of the things that I think you realize, though, at least I realize after I'm out, is that a lot of people have that misconception. So, for example, oh, CJ, thank you for your service. Well, what are you truly thanking me for? I mean, the notion of my time, because I mean, we just covered the tip of my military career. I mean, I could give you 4 years of every day a different story, but those are the highlights of what I would say. But then you go back to, well, most people don't know my story. They don't know your story. They don't know that we're out here saying it's not what you think it is.
Absolutely.
And so do I want to discourage anybody from serving? Absolutely not. If you feel that call and you feel like, hey, I've heard you say all the bad stuff, I still want to go do it. I'm not telling you don't go live your life the way you want to. What I'm saying is that just know that
go in with your eyes open.
Yes. Don't go in there just saying, government's always going to tell me the truth. We've learned that not to be true. And so, I have some Marines that are still that are friends. I've got some younger Marines that they see me like, oh, you ran for governor and I'm from South Dakota. I'm joining the Marine Corps. And, and I was like, yeah, hey, Devil Dog, when you get to your first unit, let me know. And he gets to 5th Marines, which is stationed there with 1st CEB. And I'm like, hey, can you go to the PX and get me one of those 1st Combat Engineer Battalion sweatshirts I can't get online? He's like, yeah, I got you. Will you send me one of your Internet Warlord sweatshirts? Yeah, I got you, Devil Dog.
Love it.
But
I always bring up the thank you for your service thing, and people get mad when I bring it up. And I say that for most veterans, they actually don't like the thank you for your service. It makes them feel awkward. It makes them feel odd. They don't know how to
say you're welcome, awkwardly back.
Yes, and I say all the time. It's not a good thing to say, but most vets don't get angry because they know that the person is saying it means well. Correct. So they don't get upset.
I actually thank them back, too, sometimes. But when somebody's saying, like, thank you for your service, and it's like in that kind of way, I kind of go, oh, well, you're welcome for my service.
Yes.
But
so
I mean,
what I tell people to say instead is, I want to talk about this next if I could. Most veterans, particularly combat veterans, struggle when they come back to the world. They struggle, right? So, and Vietnam veterans particularly, because of how bad we now, I joined the Marine Corps in the 80s, so most of my senior leadership were Vietnam veterans, right? Most of my senior leaders, my staff sergeants, my gunnies, my first sergeants, many of them were Vietnam veterans. So I tend to I don't want to tell them just welcome home, right? Because the Vietnam veterans weren't welcomed home. What I often tell veterans when they come back is I say, I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're home. That's how I greet them. I'm a veteran. I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're back. That's how because I know that the average veteran, particularly combat, but almost all veterans, they really want to feel like they belong again.
Yeah.
So I do my bit to do that. I say, welcome home. I'm glad you're back.
Well, that leads me into my question tonight for you, Larry, because I really have thought about this question, and I was hoping I'd be able to get it in here tonight. And that's, being a libertarian, we tend to, well, at least the more vocal of us in this party tend to irritate, I guess is a safe word to say, some of the other two parties. And especially being a veteran in a minority party, so being a minority of a minority party, I get personally a lot of flack from specifically the right, not even the left, really, honestly. But how do you handle people that, because they disagree with you in politics, will go, "Oh, stolen valor. Oh, you didn't really serve. If you don't support and worship the holy grail of Trump, your service almost becomes like a, yeah, you served, whatever." How do you handle that? Because I've gotten a lot of that from, especially
there are three pieces to that, and that goes the next. The first thing is, I don't think I've ever had someone say that to me. I don't think anyone's ever done that. I mean, they've said things like, "How can you say that you're Marine?" That kind of thing I've gotten, right? How can you say that you're Marine? Why aren't you angry? You're Marine. That I've gotten, but I've never gotten the stolen valor. The closest thing I've gotten is, "What kind of Marine are you?" That type of thing I've gotten often, right?
Yeah.
How can you say that? How can you be a lefty? How can you, and because you're not a Republican, that makes you a lefty, even though I'm not a lefty. Because you're not a Republican, you are. So I think I've gotten a lot of that. And when I get that, what I often do is say things like, "Have you served?" So I ask, "Have you served? Right. Do you understand what it's about? Have you dealt with it?" And I'll ask them, have you helped a veteran since they've been back? I just ask those questions. Have you helped the veterans since they've been back? And if they go yes, then we bond over it, and who cares? If they say no, then they have to back off, because I've just taken the moral high ground.
Yeah.
All I do is take the moral high ground. Once I take the moral high ground, they either have to bond with me or walk away. There's nothing else they can do. So literally, I take the moral high ground. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I have you on, is because the time I've spent helping veterans since about 2006 or so is when I began. And I pretty much stopped around 2016. I wish I had done more, but I guess running for office made it difficult for me to do it. I spent a lot of time trying to get veterans to be able to connect better back into the world. And I do it for free. And I help people whenever I can. And what I saw in you was someone who's done great things, but has trouble expressing those things. And that's a common problem for veterans, particularly combat veterans. And for you to be successful, you've got to become more and better at actually talking about your issues, talking about what you've done, and not just thinking, "I was doing my job," which you said at least 6 times tonight already.
Dang. Call me out on it, sir. Yes, of course.
Yes, because you're not alone, brother. There are a whole lot of you who think the same way and think I'm just doing my job, and the civilian population doesn't get it. We are less than 1% of the population. Less than 1%. And combat veterans, even smaller than that. And a lot of people simply don't get us. And one of the reasons is we don't communicate as well as we can. And one of the reasons why I brought you out here is because of that. It's what I did for about 10 years, from 2006 to 2016. I haven't done it that much, but once we talked, I knew I had to do that with you, and I'm glad I did. And I made you an example. I'm sorry, but I wanted to make you an example because I thought you could handle it, and I thought others could watch and they could see it.
And Larry, yes. that goes to what you're doing now. I mean, again, you're the legend here. You're the elder. You're the guru in this conversation for somebody like myself. And I've said it many times. I can't say this in a way that is going to make you feel a certain way that I'm hoping you do. So let me direct you to a Mr. Larry Sharpe, who explains this a lot better than I can, so I don't have to try to do it that way. But I hope to learn from you. I hope to be able to articulate. I've been saying this to you lately. I feel like I've got a Larry Sharpe conscience, like a little angel figure here going, you got to be nicer to people. You have to, you can't just tell them all they're stupid or they'll never listen to you. And I keep going, dang it, Larry, I understand. It's hard and I'm working on it. But I listen and I'm trying to learn. And that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'll tell you what, I've talked more about my Marine Corps time tonight than I have in the last 5 years, I'm sure.
I know that. That's why I did this. I know that. Because we did an interview, you never even brought it up.
Not even once.
Those of you who don't know, he actually has a tattoo of his Purple Heart on him.
I got my wrong side. I was looking at the camera. I got this one here.
Yes.
And then I also have wrong one. I also got my Eagle Globe and Anchor here.
Yeah, that's a rule. You have to have something.
Mine is custom drawn, one of a kind. It's got my dates in the anchor. And then so they go, oh, you're stolen valor. And you know what I say to that, Larry? I say it takes a pretty weak individual to hear somebody say, not only did I serve, I was in a combat role and I earned a Purple Heart. And for you to go to that level to say you're stolen valor and you were never a Marine was another one I got one time. And to me, I just go, that says more about their character than my character. So gotcha. I look at like maybe they need somebody to come along and say, hey, do you need help?
Absolutely, yes.
So I like what you said there.
Let me go to that part. When you came back to the world, did you go back to Washington? Did you go back to the Dakotas? Where'd you go when you came back?
So I stayed in California for a few years. I was
near the base.
Yeah, I like Camp Pendleton, and then there's the Menifee area, Lake Elsinore, Riverside County area. So I was there. I went to college. I got my bachelor's degree in software engineering, and I did that in 3.5 years, and used the GI Bill and whatnot, or post 9/11 GI Bill. And then, one of the things that I learned in there was being a veteran. It almost makes it so people look at you different.
Yes.
When I got out. And so I would find that my kind of speak was only really recognized by veterans, that I could only talk a certain way around these people.
Why do you think I was your translator like 7 times this evening?
Yeah, I understand that as well.
Yep.
And so it's embedded, it's ingrained, it's natural, and you don't even realize you're doing it until somebody calls you out on it. I learned in there that it was going to be tough because I went from dealing with, I could just go tell my, battalion aid station, corpsman there, hey, I'm having these issues. I need to get some help if I needed it. I want to talk to somebody. Is there a group I can go to? When you get out, you get thrust into the world.
Yes.
And they give you this Larry, I'm broken. My body, my feet, whole body is destroyed from my service, honestly. And you don't think 4 years can do that until you look back at all the hills you climbed, all the miles you hiked, all the gear you dragged with your body, all the sleepless nights, all the everything, all the exercises, everything you did. And then when you get out, it hits you like a million bricks. And, my feet are like on fire.
I remember when I got out, I must have put on 30 pounds in the first year.
Okay, I didn't really gain weight until I started playing video games because I went from being every day, you're running and you're hustling, and then all of a sudden this.
That's correct. Yes.
And then I was being fed, and I could go get junk food and sleep until 11:30, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I could do whatever I want.
The thing you brought up here, which is what a lot of people don't get, and that is the biggest problem that veterans have coming back into the world, is they feel like they don't belong. That's one of the hardest things. They feel like they don't belong. Like, I don't belong here. Like, there's a difference between me and the people around me. And the worst part is, before you went in, that didn't exist. You were part of them. Then you went in and you came back to what you thought was the same, but all of a sudden you're different, or are they different? And they don't understand that, and it's an issue. It's the transition that I'm talking about that is lacking tremendously in our system.
That's what I'm trying to touch on there, is that they thrust you into the world. They try to prepare you with the separation program, like, all right, guys, like, this is what you got to do.
Steps is garbage.
Yeah, for sure. But of course, but what they don't tell you is that you're going to be busted, and it's going to hit you later, and you're going to go into this VA system that is just going to treat you like a number. They're just going to treat you like, whether you live or die is irrelevant to them, especially in Southern California where there's so many saturated military people. So one of the things that really was hard for me was being, having these issues. I was at that point freshly out, diagnosed with TBI, PTSD. I picked up drinking again, partying, all that stuff that you think you're free. Yeah, of course. I'd go karaoke and
Yep.
all that fun stuff. And so when you get out, you're not able to express these things. You try to go to the VA, and they give you, like I said, this arbitrary number that says, okay, well, you've got this 10% for this problem, 30%
Right.
for that, 40 for this, 0 for that, and you go, but why am I getting 0 for my feet when they, like, you can see, like, and they make excuses for all your ratings, and
Because
they don't.
all they're doing is checking a box. They're government. Government
Correct.
checks a box.
And like I say to my VSO out here, it's like, look, if you want me to call you every time one of my issues from my service comes up, I'm going to be ringing your phone every day.
Yep.
So I just want the government to treat me and reward me as if they broke me.
Right.
If you broke me, if my body, if the doctor's like, CJ, you've got microfractures in your skull that's most likely causing your migraines, and you're giving me nothing for it because some guy wrote 0% because, like,
that was the box they checked.
That was just the box they checked, and now I'm suffering without the adequate care. And so one of the things.
So let me go into a different area now. When you came back, where were your family and friends? Were they in Washington? Were they in South Dakota? Where were your family and friends?
So my parents live in North Dakota.
Okay.
And my grandma lives in Washington. That's where I moved out from. My sister and my brother live in Washington.
So when you came back, what stops you from going home? Why didn't you go back to family?
College. I decided that, that at the end of the day, I still had people that were living, that were still in the Marine Corps, that were my friends.
Yes.
I wasn't ready to disconnect from that.
Yes.
So I decided.
That's why I brought that up. That's a very common thing. You stay close to a base. You stay connected somehow. You try to do 1 foot at a time, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yep.
And I did. And some days I would lock myself in my room all day, and some days I would go out and party. Some days I would try to find the answer in a bottle, and some days I'd lay there with a hangover wondering why I didn't get the answer I was looking for. And
absolutely.
so and one of the things that I'll say is that while you're in, there's more of a way to talk about these things. While you're out, they're not as proactive. Nobody's coming up to you saying, "Hey man, are you okay?"
Right.
Unless you've got that close friend, that close bond, and so I went to the VA out there. It was garbage, and I decided, I had met my now fiance at the time, and we decided that we were going to move to Washington. I went through some legal issues, which a lot of veterans do, after my time in the Marine Corps, dealing with my first daughter. I haven't seen her in over 300 days now. And then a lot of that has to do with the fact that she was able to, say, oh, he's a danger because he's a combat veteran with PTSD, and I fear for my safety. And
absolutely.
And it affected me a lot. And after we went through our court process and I lost my daughter due to paternity fraud, by the way, from another Marine, who claims to be the father of my child, and he's not. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day and a whole nother topic. But we decided to move to Washington, and the VA up there in Washington treated me a lot different. And I would encourage every veteran, listen, it don't matter how long you served, it don't matter what you went through. If it is a problem for you today, go into your VA, as much as we hate it. And don't walk in there looking for a bag of pills and the answer, but take that initial.
They'll give you that if you want, though, so you got to watch out because they will do it.
Correct, and they have no problem saying, yeah, here, take this pill for sure.
Absolutely.
But go in there with the idea of this is for you, not for them. And that's what I did. I said, I want you to start documenting my problems for me.
Okay.
And so if you treat it like it's the scribe, and like for those who don't know, the scribe is the person that writes down everything for the platoon.
Yeah.
If you treat them like your job is to now be the scribe of my medical record after my service. And then what you do is you find your VSO and you get all the doctors. And I know it sounds like a hassle, but you get all the doctor's notes for all your problems. And you put that and you butt it up with them there against what you're currently getting. And if you have a good VSO, they will take care of you. I'm actually the reason why our VSO here in Eureka, South Dakota, when we moved out here from Washington, no longer has a job. The man wouldn't turn on a computer to save a veteran's life. And that's unfortunate because that's happening in so many rural areas, so many places like that. And now we've got an actual.
let me move past the VA for a second. I know it's bad. I'm with you 100%.
Oh, for sure. We should privatize
we could
the
spend a whole lot of time on that
care.
one.
For sure. Yes, sir.
But what I want to go to though is if you're looking back now from your military service, what do you miss?
I'm going to start with the people. Obviously, past that, I'm going to start with the pride.
Sure.
Of service. The fact that like you had on our preview here one of the only pictures of me in a dress blues uniform. I only got to wear it twice in my military career. That's the big selling point for a lot of people. Look at that uniform. I only got to wear that twice in my career, Larry.
I keep the picture of me in my first unit right here.
Oh, I have that somewhere downstairs. I have that somewhere.
I still keep it. Absolutely.
And one of the things that really sucked for me is when I was in Afghanistan, I lost all my pictures and my hard drives in a storage unit that wasn't getting paid for. And it's terrible because, you go to your buddies and you're like, hey, man, I know this sucks to ask, but do you have any pictures of me?
Right.
Because I'm somebody saying I'm stolen valor and I was never a Marine, and I just want to show them a picture of me shooting that machine gun that one day. And
right.
At the end of the day, Larry, it's one of those things where, as a veteran, we have to realize that our community is small.
Yep.
That the government should not be our first answer of who we seek help. It should be from the ones that we do. We have sappers, or combat engineers are called sappers, and we have Call a Sapper Day. When I see those posts out, I normally grab my thumbs and go, hey, what's up, Devil Dog? How you doing? Just to, and I've reconnected with some of the guys I've deployed with. There's still other guys who I haven't really reconnected with yet, but we're still on our friends list. I still see them raising their kids and having their families. And I feel like at some point in my life, when I look back at it all, I'm going to go, it was a commitment I said I was going to do. Yep. I dedicated 4 years of my life to it.
Yep.
Did it make me a better person? I hope so. Mm-hmm. And will it inspire somebody else to make a decision in their life they'll be proud of? Because I'm proud of my military service, regardless of what the wars are, regardless of what people say. Oh, it's an oil war for the big government cartels and blah blah blah. But I give it to the individual. We go in there saying I want to be something more than just a citizen. I want to be somebody that will write that check for my life.
Let me go the opposite way.
Okay.
Now you have hindsight. You can look back at it now. Right?
It's 2020, right?
Yep. You got hindsight now. So what do you regret?
Getting in trouble, being young, and getting in trouble to the point where, at the end of the day, I could have probably got it to the rank of sergeant in 4 years if I wouldn't have just had somebody say, hey, pull me aside at the right time, make that right decision instead of making the wrong decision and having to own that mistake. And that to me was the biggest weight for me. So, I mean, I regret also, not telling people more of how much I appreciated them when I had the chance. And so, that's something that while you've said, Larry, you talk a lot about other people, it's because I'm grateful for a lot of other people. And that's where that comes from is it's I'm in that spot where it's not about me. I'd rather it be about those that inspire me, those that make me a better person because I can relate to them or I know them and they're a mentor or they're somebody that I respect. And so I've got so many of those officers, senior enlisted. I mean, to just be a guy who was a corporal troublemaker in a combat engineer platoon, to have the support that I know I have and the people, one of my company commander, Captain Lucas, became Major Lucas. He was also my boot camp company commander.
That's weird.
I know. It was kind of crazy because my first day in boot camp, I'll never forget it. A guy jumped out the third-story window and landed flat on the ground. And later, when I found out it was Captain Lucas that was the company commander for that, and I remembered it, we were at a movement where our battalion was hiking, and I was a guardian angel in the back of a Humvee, and I had a chance to speak candidly with then Captain Lucas. And I said, Captain, in front of our battalion commander, do you remember the guy that jumped out the window in boot camp? and it was just those little things. He was a great guy. He actually committed suicide. And I found that out the hard way. And I've had the guy that I went to First Combat Engineer Battalion with when I was supposed to go to Buford. I went to First Combat Engineer Battalion with a guy by the name of Simmons. He committed suicide by cop in Colorado.
This is the thing that also people don't understand. Every vet knows someone who's put a gun in their mouth in some way, shape, or form, either figuratively or literally. Every vet knows at least one person who's done that.
Correct.
It's insane how often I hear that. It's so common. It's one of the things I talk about, and I told the story before, but I used to work with the Yellow Ribbon Fund, and I stopped working with the VA because the VA was so incompetent. So I only work with nonprofits. So one of my work, and this is one time we're doing something up maybe in Massachusetts or I forgot, New Hampshire. I forgot where we were, but there was a situation where I was trying to train veterans when they came back. It was a reserve unit. Me and my training reservists. It was a reserve unit coming back from Afghanistan, and when they came back from Afghanistan, what I was trying to do was train them how to get their jobs back. A lot of them had lost their jobs. They were gone for 15 months. Army unit. So they come back, and I'm trying to train them how to do this. And I go to my class. Nobody's there. Yep. So I go to the Yellow Ribbon Fund. No, it wasn't yellow. It was some other. I forgot which one it was. But I went to one of the nonprofit people, and I said, "You've got to tell these people they have to be here. It's mandatory." And they go, "I can't tell them it's mandatory. I can't do that." I said, "You have to tell them it's mandatory." I can't do that. So I go to the company First Sergeant, and I say, "First Sergeant, your guys aren't showing up." And he got mad. He was like, "I'm tired of these guys. They're going to come back, and within 9 months, they're going to be homeless. They're going to be they won't do anything." God damn, he's so mad, right? Yeah. And I said, "Please just order them. Say it's my fault. Blame me." He's like, "I'm fine." He goes to the captain. He orders them. And the civilian didn't understand. She was upset. She said, "You can't." I said, "No, you don't get it. If you order them, then they have an excuse to show up."
Oh,
they don't.
I see your logic.
Yes, they don't want help. And these guys came out of Afghanistan. They were badasses, right? You got badasses who came out of Afghanistan, and they don't want to say, "I need help," because they're badasses. I get it. They are. They're hardcore guys fighting in the mountains of Afghanistan. I'm with you. So now they come back. They don't want some civilian, some former Marine to give them any help, whatever. They don't need that. They're tough guys. Well, they got ordered. So they all show up, and they show up with "Well, I didn't want to be here because I got ordered." Meanwhile, they're all taking notes, asking
what is it called, Larry? Voluntold? Is that
being voluntold? They wanted to be voluntold.
Yeah.
But only a vet can understand that psychology.
Yes, I get that. As soon as you said it, I was like, it clicks. I get. You're getting voluntold to go.
Yes,
it's almost like mandatory fun day.
Correct.
It's the oxymoron.
That's exactly right. So we voluntold them, and they showed up. The first sergeant got it. So he ordered them. They all showed up. Now I'm showing them. I'm teaching them how to change their resumes. Teaching them how to tell a success story in HR language, not Army language.
Right. That was the biggest challenge for me when I got out was, how do I write a resume to explain that I'm in charge of multi-millions of dollars of vehicles and of a vehicle and like I can.
How do I tell someone 1371? If I just say 1371, every Marine gets it.
Right.
Outside of that, what? That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So yes. So I get you. These are the things we have to be working on. So I'm glad that you even talk about this issue. It's really important. But the idea of people committing suicide, knowing that, as you see 22 a day, is horrible. And the only way we change that is not through programs. It's through connection.
Correct.
That's it. It's through connection. If people get connected, they don't put a gun in their mouth.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
That's one of the things that I've done that I'm not going to say that I haven't questioned what that road would look like in my life, obviously. But I honestly, when I get to that point, if I have, in the very few rare moments, I'm like, well, maybe my life would be better if it wasn't my life. You know,
sure.
Very, very rare, I would say that I've questioned whether or not being alive is worth it. But when I can't even relate, I guess, in that aspect to what makes somebody do that. But I would say those are people that, you know, I've had this conversation about suicide before with a really close friend of mine. And, you know, we've come to the conclusion that they've made the decision that the pain they're living with today is not worth living tomorrow.
Correct.
And what's sad about that is that there are those Marines, sailors, airmen, you know, I'll even Army, all lump in the Coast Guard, and just soon to be Space Force once you guys get your first war. That someday we're going to look back and we're going to go, the greatest disservice we did for veterans was to label their mental health crisis as a detriment.
Yes.
Because these are some of the greatest people that want to be active and take on that pride in their country and stand for something. And it's sad that it's abused by a government that profiteers off of them for, lobbyists and their interests. And that's why I separate the government from the individual people
100%.
Serving. And I say to them, listen, you might be that guy out there tonight, maybe watching this, drinking the bottle. You're loved, you're cared for. You do have people that would be more than willing to show you that you belong. Again, there can be purpose.
Absolutely.
And
you brought it up, brother. Purpose. Yes. That's the key. You hit the exact thing. That's the key.
I'm not going to say I haven't been to counseling before, Larry. I mean, honestly, but that's what was told to me is, CJ, it doesn't sound like you have a purpose. Well, I moved to South Dakota. I started off angry when I moved here, and then I started off being an internet warlord, just to kind of do, like, I've been called a satirical candidate, kind of a shout out to Vermin Supreme and his satirical candidate, using jokes and humor to kind of understand and articulate your principles and points. So I'd rather be the satirical candidate that is, making people question the narrative of the two parties by saying, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm not that guy that's going to tell you that I support what the government's doing. I'm the guy that's questioning what the government's doing, and I hope you will too. And I found my voice in running for political office.
Hold on. This is the point that I want to bring up, and this is a shameless plug for the party.
Oh, plug away.
It is this. Most of us who joined the military, we believed that we were fighting for freedom. We believed that we were fighting for a way of life. We believed 100% that what we were doing was righteous and just and everything was good. Absolutely. Veterans who get out of the military, you can still do that. It's called the Liberty Movement. You can actually still do what you were trying to do when you first joined. You can still do it. And that's your purpose. And whether that purpose is running for office or helping someone run for office or being an activist or being an internet warrior or warlord. Any of those things.
And that was one of the things, Larry, that I'm not just an internet warlord. I actually was introduced to libertarianism, like I said, through Cash Jackson.
Yep.
Who then, of course, opened the door for great libertarian speakers such as yourself, Adam Kokesh, and Judge Gray, and all these people that have already taken the mantle and brought it to that level. So I was actually an activist first before I was a libertarian.
There we go.
And so I was going out to Washington, D.C. and helping with marches and helping do all that stuff. And then I went out to Standing Rock. And then somebody said, well, you should consider taking a political office. And I was like, well, I don't want to just run for, a low office or whatnot. Not that Senate is a low office in a state, but I want to just jump in and make the biggest impact I can from the gate. Yep. And I think with having my background, being the loud vocal speaker I am, I would be a hard opponent for any Republican or Democrat to debate. And
I like that.
And because right now, my opponent, Brian Breitling, who won his primary since the last time we talked, it's Brian Breitling that got the nomination from his party. He is a cricket on the internet. You can't find him anywhere. I'm sitting here in the morning, like drinking my cup of coffee and saying, anybody join my conversation. Like, let's have fun and let's make this, and well, again, I got to fine tune my message, make it nicer, obviously, and listen more to your advice for that purpose. And I do try to do that, but there are the days where they say things, Larry, where you're just like, I don't get it. You say, I
do it too. Look, you see me do it. I try my best to always be calm, cool, collected. But I drop an F-bomb here or there.
I give people this.
I get upset here or there. I do too. I'm still human and so are you.
Correct.
We're always going to do that sometimes.
I can curse like a Marine and say yes, please, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, all that stuff, all in the same sentence. But
absolutely.
But I have a rule, Larry. I give everybody, first and foremost, I don't ask, if I meet you, I don't ask you your political party. I say I give everybody kindness, courtesy, dignity, and respect where shown.
I like
If
it.
you're showing people kindness, courtesy, dignity, and respect, you're somebody that I can show you kindness, courtesy, dignity, and respect. If you don't give it to me, I promise you, no better friend, no worse enemy she might as well be tattooed on my body somewhere. Because
I love it.
And so when I tell you I can't wait to debate my opponent, I kind of go, role play with me here if you would, Larry. I want to end qualified immunity for everybody, not just police and law enforcement. I want to end it for everybody. Nobody can hide behind immunity from doing wrong to people.
I love it.
Now, when I say that to a Republican, what do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, "Oh, well, that's terrible." You know, but wait a minute. Can we not agree that nobody should be able to hurt anybody with immunity?
Nope, that's not what he's going to say, CJ.
That's why I asked role playing.
He is going to say this. I see how you are, CJ. You don't understand the hard job. Cops put their life on the line. You should know better. You were a Marine. You put your life on the line. You can't be judged the same way when you're out there doing that, and cops can't either. Shame on you. You don't care. You don't care about your community? What is wrong with you? Cops they put their life on the line to save you. And now you're going to let some bad guy out there, some drug dealer, decide that the cop is wrong and put him away? Come on, whose side are you on, CJ?
Yeah, see, this is the difference. Okay, so thank you for role-playing that, Larry. That might not actually, and to preface this, that might not be Larry's actual stance. That's him role-playing my opponent.
That's not my stance at all.
Yeah, I understand that. So what I'm saying, my response back to that is a very simple one then. If you believe that anybody should be immune from hurting anyone, regardless of their title and position, then you're not the one actually protecting the community.
I understand. You think drug dealers and thugs, they're the same as cops. That's how you are. That's true. What you think, CJ.
I think people are people, and everybody should be entitled to due process of law.
She tells me stop speaking duopoly. I am. I'm speaking duopoly. I am. It's true, Shelley. I am. I'm good at this. Back and forth. I'm good at this.
And I know you're good at this. So what I'm trying to get at, Larry, is that everybody should be able to have due process. By saying a certain class of people are immune from the things they do.
You're getting off topic.
Okay.
Sorry. This is Vet Day. I got it. This is Vet Day. We can talk about this next time.
Okay.
Vet Day.
Yes, sir.
So, yes. Look, what I want to get at here, if I could, is just a final. Do you have anything that you would like to say regarding your service or regarding vets before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Again, thank you for your service. I'm glad you're here, Larry, because if you would have made a decision different in your life, you wouldn't be here to mentor somebody like me.
That's true. Yep.
And so what I would say to veterans is that I found a new purpose. I found a way that I can still uphold my constitutional oath that fulfills me, that allows me to say, what do these words mean in the Constitution of the United States? And when I read the words, all enemies foreign and domestic, what does that mean?
Yep.
And what does domestic terror look like? We have a long list that our forefathers gave us of, I wouldn't say complaints, I'd say violations of human rights and dignity that the king was doing to our people. But and so when you read these words, if you can start to apply them to today's modern time, you need to realize that there is one way to peacefully reform and form a more perfect union, and that's by no longer participating in their two-party system. And by saying, I'm going to be that guy that says, no, Brian Breitling, you're not just going to walk into office. Before you do, you have to talk to this Marine Corps combat veteran, and you have to make sure that you know this more than me, and we're going to do it in front of all 27,500 people in our district.
I love that.
So what I'm going to get at, Larry, before I go, if you're a veteran and you're feeling like you could definitely benefit from this party, just as simple as you can reach out to Mr. Larry Sharpe, you can reach out to me. I do a coffee show in the morning called Coffee and a Conversation. I bring on guests. I talk about issues that are controversial. I've used my First Amendment to my fullest capabilities.
I like it.
And I challenge the status quo. And you will find that if you can find that purpose back in your life, you're going to put the bottle down. I'm happy to say I only drink occasionally here on a special occasion. One thing I will say, living in a state like South Dakota, or as I call it, Meth Dakota, because the Queen of South Dakota declared that we're all on meth out here.
I remember.
You're
on it.
One thing I'll bring up for veterans issues, if this is where I'll leave it, is that the state here has a chance to pass a constitutional amendment that will not allow the government to tax, regulate, or do anything with cannabis, and will allow veterans to use it as a alternative to the medicals out here. I am 12 miles north in my home state of North Dakota. I'm a war hero. I use those terms in the vernacular lightly, obviously, but here in South Dakota, if I used cannabis, I would be a criminal.
Right.
And so what I find crazy is that Republican Party thanks me for my service and says, heal yourself. This Republican Party says, you're a criminal. We're going to put you in a cage and take everything from you. And so I would hope that we can get that passed here because, when I lived in Washington, I used to never get migraines.
I like the idea of I like the self-medication piece, and I think cannabis can be a great tool for veterans. I can
for sure. Agree. So I would hope that if you're watching this, I know this will be shared either if it hasn't already now been shared on the Libertarian Party of South Dakota page. Please make sure that is your big talking point to your Republican friends out here in our one-party monopoly, because we have a chance to say the VA is no longer going to give veterans bags of pills where the label says suicide.
Yep,
we're not going to just let them walk out of these buildings alone. We're going to form groups of veterans that are going to have this natural healing ability. And I have already people that are just waiting to go into South Dakota and bring this unity together. So for that, that'd be my biggest veteran issue is allow us to heal ourselves. Don't tell us how you're going to heal us.
All right, guys, if you like this kind of stuff, then do me a favor. As I say always, please follow me on Twitter. This matters. Click on there now. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on, not Larry Sharpe, but Sharpe Way on Facebook. Follow me on Sharpe Way on YouTube also. Got to follow me on that. If you guys got some extra cash, awesome. Patreon.com/Sharpe Way. That's awesome. Throw me 10, 20 bucks. If you're a bazillionaire like CJ is, throw me a bunch more money in if you got. Otherwise, don't worry, because no matter what, you can always do. Like, comment, share. That helps no matter what, and it's free. So just do that. CJ, I want to say thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate the time you gave me. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want more info on CJ, please head over there to CJ Abernathy for Senate. Absolutely.